Worry is a natural response to uncertainty, but it is also one of the greatest obstacles to faith. It creeps into the mind, fills the heart with fear, and robs the soul of peace. Worry is not just a harmless habit. It is a heavy chain that binds people to doubt, causing them to forget who God is and what He has promised. It keeps the mind running in circles, searching for solutions that only God can provide. The more a person worries, the more they magnify their problems instead of magnifying God's power. Worry convinces people to take control, to try and force outcomes, to predict the future as if they have the final say. But faith calls for surrender, for trust, for a deep conviction that God is already working things out, even when there is no evidence yet. Every time worry arises, it challenges faith. It whispers lies that God has forgotten, that things will never change, that the worst is inevitable. But faith speaks a different language. Faith stands on the promises of God, knowing that He has never failed and never will. Faith is not about ignoring problems, but about refusing to let them dictate emotions and decisions. It is about believing that God is greater than any situation, no matter how impossible it seems. Worry, on the other hand, makes people live in a future that hasn't happened yet, imagining all the ways things could go wrong. It drains energy, steals joy, and replaces hope with anxiety. Worry also reveals where trust is placed. When people worry, they are often relying on their own ability to fix things. They analyze, overthink, and try to control outcomes instead of leaving them in God's hands. But true faith requires a shift in focus. It is not about having all the answers, but about knowing the one who does. It is about choosing to believe that even when things don't make sense, God is still in control. Worry tries to convince people that they must figure everything out on their own. But faith reminds them that God has already gone ahead and prepared the way. The Bible is filled with reminders not to worry. Over and over again, God tells His people to trust Him, to be still, to have faith. When Jesus spoke to His disciples, He asked them why they worried about their needs when their Heavenly Father knew exactly what they required. He pointed to the birds of the air who do not sow or reap, yet are fed daily by God's provision. He reminded them that if God takes care of even the smallest creatures, how much more will He take care of those He loves? Worry does not change circumstances, it only makes the journey harder. But faith invites peace, the kind of peace that cannot be shaken by external circumstances. Many people find themselves in a constant battle between worry and faith. One moment they trust God completely, and the next they are overwhelmed by fear. But faith is not about never feeling afraid. It is about choosing to believe even when fear is present. It is about making a decision every day to surrender worries to God, to refuse to dwell on what could go wrong, and to focus instead on His promises. Faith is an active choice, a daily discipline of replacing anxious thoughts with truth. It is about standing firm even when everything around seems uncertain. The truth is, worry and faith cannot coexist. One will always overpower the other. The more a person worries, the weaker their faith becomes. But the more they exercise faith, the less room worry has to take over. It is not about ignoring problems or pretending everything is fine. It is about knowing that no matter what happens, God is in control. Worry keeps people stuck in fear, but faith moves them forward into God's promises. God's timing is something that can be difficult to understand, especially when life feels like it is at a standstill. People pray, they wait, and when things don't happen as quickly as they expect, doubt begins to creep in. The human heart is wired to want things immediately, to see results, to have prayers answered in the moment. But God does not operate on human schedules. He sees the entire picture, the beginning and the end, and He knows exactly when the right time has come. What seems like a delay is often divine preparation. What appears to be silence is often God working behind the scenes, aligning things in ways that cannot yet be seen. Waiting on God requires trust. It means believing that just because nothing seems to be happening does not mean He is not working. In moments of waiting, it is easy to question, to wonder if prayers are being heard, to feel like time is slipping away. But God is never in a hurry, and He is never late. His timing is not just perfect, it is intentional. Every delay has a purpose. Every waiting season is shaping something within. Every unanswered prayer is setting the stage for something greater. Impatience often causes people to take matters into their own hands, to rush into decisions, to force doors open that God never intended them to walk through. But when God's timing is trusted, there is peace in knowing that whatever He has planned will come at exactly the right moment. There are times when it feels like nothing is changing, like prayers are bouncing off the walls, like doors remain closed no matter how hard they are pushed. These are the moments that test faith the most. It is easy to trust God when things are happening quickly, when everything is falling into place, when prayers are answered immediately, but true faith is developed in the waiting. It is in the silent seasons, in the long nights of prayer, in the moments of uncertainty that faith is refined. When God does not move on human timelines, it is not because He has forgotten. It is because He is preparing something better than what was originally asked for. Many times people look around and see others moving forward, achieving their dreams, stepping into their blessings, while they remain stuck in the same place. Comparison begins to steal joy, making it seem as though God is answering everyone else's prayers, but not their own. But what is often forgotten is that everyone has their own divine timing. What is right for one person in one season may not be right for another. God's plans are uniquely tailored, and when He says it is time, nothing can stop what He has set in motion. There is no need to rush, no need to force what is not ready, no need to panic over time slipping away. When God moves, things shift instantly. What took years of waiting can change in a moment. One of the greatest challenges in waiting on God's timing is learning to be still. The world teaches that success comes from constant movement, from striving, from making things happen. But God calls His people to rest in Him, to trust that He is orchestrating things in ways they cannot comprehend. Doors that do not open now may be protecting from something that was never meant to be. Delays may be preventing unnecessary pain. Seasons of waiting may be strengthening character, preparing for what is ahead. What looks like a setback is often a setup for something greater. God is never careless with time. He is intentional, precise, and always on time. Struggles have a way of making life feel heavy, as if the weight of the world is pressing down with no relief in sight. When challenges pile up, when doors keep closing, when prayers seem to go unanswered, it is easy to believe that the pain will never end. It becomes hard to see past the difficulty, hard to imagine a future beyond the hardship. The mind starts to whisper that this is just how life is going to be, that things will never change, that the struggle is permanent. But that is not the truth. No storm lasts forever. No pain is eternal. What feels overwhelming today is temporary, and God has already set an expiration date on the struggle. Difficult seasons have a way of distorting vision. When life is good, it is easy to believe in better days, to hold on to hope, to trust that things are working together for good. But when life becomes a battlefield, when one problem follows another, perspective begins to shift. It starts to feel as if things will never improve, as if God is silent, as if the hardship is endless. That is the deception of struggle. It makes what is temporary feel permanent. It makes people believe that they will always be stuck, that they will always hurt, that things will never get better. But just as the night eventually gives way to the morning, just as the seasons change, so do the circumstances of life. What seems unbearable today will not always feel this way. God never allows a struggle without a purpose. He is not absent in suffering. He is not unaware of the pain. Every tear, every disappointment, every moment of hardship is seen by Him. Nothing is wasted. There is growth happening in the waiting, strength being built in the trials, faith being deepened in the struggle. Even when it does not feel like it, even when everything seems unfair, even when prayers seem to be met with silence, God is still working. He is molding, shaping, refining. He is preparing something greater, and often the most powerful breakthroughs come after the most difficult seasons. The enemy wants nothing more than to convince people that their struggles are final. He wants them to believe that they are alone, that their prayers are unheard, that things will never get better. He whispers lies that fuel doubt, that weaken faith, that create fear. But God's truth is different. He says that he will never leave nor forsake. He says that he works all things together for good. He says that the suffering of this present time is not worth comparing to the glory that will be revealed. The struggle is not the end of the story. It is not the final chapter. It is just a moment, a season, a temporary place on the journey towards something greater. Faith is not tested in times of ease, but in times of difficulty. It is easy to trust God when everything is going well, when life feels good, when prayers are answered quickly. But true faith is developed in the moments when nothing makes sense, when everything seems to be falling apart, when there is no clear path forward. Those are the moments that require holding on to God's promises, even when there is no evidence yet. It is in the struggle that faith is strengthened, in the waiting that character is built, in the hardship that dependence on God deepens. Struggles may feel endless, but they are not. They are temporary. They are refining, and they are preparing the way for something greater. Faith is more than just believing in God's existence. It is an active trust in His power, His promises, and His perfect plan. When faith is strong, it creates an atmosphere for miracles to happen. It opens the door for God to move in ways that cannot be explained by logic or human reasoning. Faith is not about having all the answers, nor is it about seeing every step ahead. It is about believing that God is in control, even when nothing makes sense. It is about trusting that He is working behind the scenes, arranging circumstances, shifting things in ways that the natural eye cannot see. Miracles do not happen in an environment of doubt. When the heart is consumed by fear, when the mind is overwhelmed with worry, it becomes difficult to see God's hand at work. Doubt clouds vision, causing people to rely on what they see instead of what they believe. But faith operates differently. It does not require physical evidence. It does not wait for circumstances to change before believing in God's power. Faith moves first. It steps forward even when the path is unclear. It trusts God's word even when the situation looks impossible. It believes that nothing is too hard for God, that no door is too closed for Him to open, that no mountain is too big for Him to move. Throughout the Bible, miracles followed faith. When the woman with the issue of blood reached out to touch the hem of Jesus' garment, it was not just her action that healed her, it was her faith. When the blind man cried out to Jesus for healing, it was not just his words that restored his sight, it was his faith. Again and again, Jesus said, "Your faith has made you whole." He did not say their effort, their status, or their qualifications. He pointed to their faith. Because faith activates the supernatural. It invites God into the impossible. It makes room for Him to work in ways that human effort never could. Many people pray for miracles but still hold on to fear. They ask God for breakthroughs but secretly wonder if it will ever happen for them. They desire to see His power, yet they allow doubt to take root in their hearts. But faith requires full surrender. It is not about hoping that God might do something. It is about knowing that He will. It is about praying with expectation, living with confidence, believing in advance that what God has promised He will fulfill. Faith does not waver when things look uncertain. It does not shrink back when the situation seems hopeless. It stands firm, trusting that God's timing, God's ways, and God's plans are perfect. One of the greatest barriers to miracles is the mindset of limitation. When people focus on their own abilities, their own resources, their own understanding, they put restrictions on what God can do. But faith removes those limits. It acknowledges that God is bigger than any obstacle, that He is not bound by time, that He's not confined by human expectations. Faith declares that even when all odds are against it, God is still able. Even when there is no way in sight, He can create one. Even when the situation seems beyond repair, He can restore it. Faith is not just a concept, it is a force. It has the power to shift circumstances, to open doors that seemed permanently closed, to break chains that have held people captive for years. It is the key that unlocks the miraculous. It does not mean that challenges will not arise or that hardships will not come, but it does mean that no situation is too far gone for God to turn around. Miracles happen where faith is present. They are not reserved for a select few. They are available to those who choose to believe beyond what they can see. God's plans are always greater than what the human mind can comprehend. What seems like the biggest dream, the highest goal, or the most ambitious vision is still small compared to what God is capable of doing. His vision is higher, his thoughts are greater, and his purpose goes far beyond anything that can be imagined. But too often, people settle for less because they do not see themselves the way God sees them. They limit their expectations based on past experiences, failures, or what others have told them is possible. They allow fear, insecurity, and doubt to convince them that they are not capable, not qualified, not chosen. But God does not call based on human qualifications. He calls based on His purpose. What He has planned is greater than any limitation, and when He opens a door, no one can close it. Many people pray for God to do something big in their lives, but deep down they struggle to believe it can happen for them. They see others succeeding, others stepping into their calling, others experiencing breakthroughs, and they wonder if God has forgotten about them. But God does not overlook or forget. He has already placed a divine assignment on every life, a purpose that is uniquely designed. The reason some prayers seem unanswered is not because God is saying no, it is because He is preparing something bigger than what was asked for. Sometimes what seems like a delay is actually protection. Sometimes what feels like rejection is actually redirection towards something greater. God does not just want to meet expectations, He wants to exceed them. There are times when it feels like everything is at a standstill, like progress is impossible, like dreams are slipping away. In those moments, doubt begins to whisper that maybe this is all life has to offer, that maybe what was once believed to be possible was just wishful thinking. But that is when faith has to rise above feelings. God does not give a vision without providing the means to fulfill it. He does not place a calling on a life without making a way for it to happen. The size of the dream is not the problem. What matters is whether there is faith to step into it. God's plans require trust. They require walking forward even when the full picture is not visible. They require believing that He has already gone ahead and prepared the way. People often ask for small things because they are afraid to ask for more. They settle because they fear disappointment. They lower their expectations because they do not want to get their hopes up. But God is not limited by human fears. He is not restricted by what seems possible. He does not operate within the boundaries of logic or human understanding. The moment faith is placed in Him fully, the moment fear is replaced with trust, doors begin to open that no effort could have opened. Opportunities appear that could not have been planned. Blessings come in ways that could never have been expected. God does not do things halfway. When He moves completely. Stepping into God's greater plan requires letting go of doubt, letting go of hesitation, letting go of the fear of failure. It requires choosing to believe even when there is no evidence yet. It requires preparing for what has been prayed for, walking in expectation, living with the confidence that what God has started, He will finish. It requires understanding that what He has planned is not small, not ordinary, not average. It is greater than anything that could have been imagined. His ways are beyond comprehension, His blessings are beyond measure, and His purpose is beyond human limitations. Gratitude has the power to shift everything. It changes perspectives, refocuses the heart, and opens the door for even greater blessings. When life is filled with struggles, when prayers seem unanswered, when circumstances feel overwhelming, it is easy to focus on what is missing, on what has not yet happened, on what is still out of reach. The mind naturally gravitates toward lack, toward what is wrong, toward what is missing. But when gratitude becomes the focus, everything shifts. Instead of dwelling on what has not happened, the heart begins to recognize what God has already done. Instead of focusing on unanswered prayers, attention is given to the prayers that have already been answered. Gratitude does not mean ignoring struggles or pretending difficulties do not exist, but it does mean choosing to see the goodness of God, even in the midst of them. God moves in an atmosphere of gratitude. When a heart is full of thanksgiving, faith grows stronger. The enemy wants nothing more than to keep people focused on what they lack, on what has gone wrong, on what is still missing. He knows that a heart filled with frustration and doubt is far from God, but gratitude keeps the heart aligned with Him. It keeps faith strong, hope alive, and joy unshaken. It reminds the soul that no matter what is happening in the present, God is still in control. He is still good, still faithful, still working behind the scenes. Gratitude does not wait for everything to be perfect. It chooses to rejoice even in the waiting. In the Bible, Jesus performed many miracles, but there was a common pattern. Gratitude preceded breakthroughs. When He fed the 5,000, He gave thanks before the miracle happened. When He stood before Lazarus' tomb, He thanked God before calling him forth. Gratitude came first. That was not by accident. Jesus was showing the power of thanksgiving, the way it creates space for the miraculous. So often, people wait for the blessing before they give thanks, but true faith thanks God in advance. It does not need to see the full picture to believe that He is working. It does not wait for the miracle before praising Him. It praises in the middle of the storm, in the waiting season, in the unknown. Many people miss their blessings because they are too focused on what they do not have. They wake up thinking about their struggles, go through the day dwelling on what is missing, and fall asleep feeling unfulfilled. But what if gratitude became the first response instead? What if instead of waking up with worry, the first thought was, "Thank you, God, for another day"? What if instead of focusing on what is lacking, the heart shifted to recognizing the gifts that are already present? There is always something to be grateful for. The breath in the lungs, the strength to get up, the small moments of kindness, the unseen ways God has provided, protected, and guided. All of it is worth gratitude. When gratitude becomes a habit, it changes the way life is experienced. It does not mean everything will be easy, but it does mean that challenges will no longer have the same power. Gratitude makes it harder for fear to take hold, harder for worry to consume, harder for negativity to control the mind. It builds resilience, strengthens faith, and deepens trust in God's plan. Even in seasons of waiting, even in moments of uncertainty, even when things do not go as expected, gratitude keeps the heart anchored. It is not just about saying thank you when things are good. It is about maintaining a heart of thanksgiving no matter what. That is where peace is found, where joy remains unshaken, where faith continues to grow.